Hi, everyone. I'm going to start sharing. Today's topic is Rahab. And even her name is interesting because Rahab means wide. And so there's even a pun on her actual name. Um, and so uh, Here we have a picture of Rahab with the two spies. All right, and I'll remind you of the story if you don't remember it. We'll talk about that anyway. It's Rahab with the two spies, and here she's clearly is a tempting woman, right? With very hairy looking spies. um, and this is one of Tissot's pictures, which is called The Harlot of Jericho and the Two Spies. Okay. Now, one of my colleagues, she actually were born on the same year. Some of you may know of her work, Tikva Firmakensky, who has a wonderful collection called Reading the Woman of the Bible. And she had other books as well, which is called In the Wake of the Goddesses. And she also, I don't know if it came out before or after she died, but she had a very important commentary on Ruth, which I think she was working on with Tamar Ashkenazi, which is out. It's a wonderful commentary. Anyway, in her comments are what I'm using right here, the green passages. And so in the section called Other Prostitutes in Bible, she talks about Dinah, who goes out, right? Who at the end, I'll just make this bigger so you can see, who at the end of the story, her brothers get the last word and they say, shall our sister be treated as a prostitute? Then there's Tamar, who Judah saw and thought she was a prostitute. Why? Because she covered her face. And then in the story of Jephthah, the Gileadite's mother, who was actually, no, that wasn't the Haftarah last week. Yeah, I think it was Jephthah. Yeah. So Jephthah, also his mother was a prostitute. And then there's two prostitutes, if you remember, who fought over the living child in the Book of Kings. You remember that King,
Solomon.
Solomon, thank you. King Solomon, came and he, with his sword, he said, okay, I'll decide who's gonna, just like a man, I'm gonna decide who's the real mother. Anyway, they never got that far. And then Ruth, who is doing something very, very interesting. If you remember, when she goes to sleep with Boaz, if you remember, she's really taking a risk. First of all, she's a foreign woman, and she's going, and she ends up, if it doesn't work out, right, she might be considered a prostitute. And also, prostitutes very often did come to the threshing floor in the middle of the night, or at least women who are not proper. Why? Because it would be a big time of celebration, right? They brought in the grain and everyone's nice and happy. So again, another mention of prostitutes or potential prostitutes in the Bible. And finally, there's the people of Israel who are, whenever they go astray, they are also called, they are prostituting. And we have, of course, the case of Gomer, who's Hosea's wife. Most of these people we've actually studied over the years and during this Midrash class. So now we come to Rahab. So her name, it means wide or broad. So she is the broad of Jericho. And another name for a broad is a loose woman, right? And her name is also emblematic of the permeable boundaries of Israel. She's the wide open woman who is the wide open door to Canaan, or maybe in a negative view, if she wouldn't be loyal to us, but loyal to her own community, she would be the wide open door to apostasy. So this is a very interesting take, which we don't usually think about in connection with Rahab. To most of us, she simply is the female prostitute who lives in the wall and who welcomes the two spies who come to stay with her, and she protects them. But Tikva from Makensky is looking at it as a different way, right? And it's an interesting perspective. And because open boundaries are dangerous, right? Others can see them as presenting an opportunity. And here in the Rahab story, the negativity, right? The negativity of the open boundaries, right? The open boundaries to apostasy, to sinning, is counterbalanced by the positive images that the story projects, because we'll see that she is very, very loyal to the people of Israel and to the God. So Rahab's persona has many of Israel's classic hero themes. She's a female savior, like the mothers of the Exodus. Think Miriam, or think Miriam's mother who saved the babies, or think the midwives. She's a trickster. She's an outsider, like Jacob was in Laban's house, who managed to get by trickery. She survives by her wits, and she comes to God by her faith. So Rahab, the whore, is also the outsider's outsider. She's the most marginal of the marginal. These are not my words, these are beautiful words of Tikva. She is the quintessential downtrodden with whom Israel identifies. Just as her pious behavior reverses expectations of how prostitutes act, so her elevation is a reversal of the normal expectations for a prostitute's futures. God interrupts normative societal expectations by exalting the prostitute, just as God interrupted expectations by choosing the younger sons and freeing the slaves. The saving of Rahab is part of and an example of God's nature and Israel's mission. So what Tikva is pointing out, which I think is particularly brilliant, and I don't know if too many of you have thought about this, but a prostitute is an outsider. All prostitutes are outsiders because of the way they make their living, right? And perhaps in some countries where they get national security and where they're maybe in Holland, I'm thinking of an example where prostitutes might be protected by the government and pay taxes and whatever. But very often, in general, she's not. But I like her looking at the taking of a woman, and by her nature, women also are outsiders, right? They're not men. They're not the normal. By taking the idea of the prostitute and saying that God's relationship to her is like it is to younger sons who usurp the older, or slaves who end up being freed, I think she's making a brilliant contribution to our thinking. Here's another picture. All right, this is Marc Chagall, the picture of Rahab and the spies of Jericho. And here it's quite clear that she's a prostitute, and here are the men. It's not clear what exactly they're doing. This one looks like he might even be reading from a telephone, right? Except they didn't have a telephone, a cell phone, because they didn't have them in those days. It's not clear what these men are doing, but whatever. Maybe she's getting information from them. It's not clear. And now we come to the actual story, all right? So the actual story, and there is a lovely connection here with the words of hiding. Maybe I'll turn this into another color. It's not so clear color here. Let me make it, yeah, that's much easier. And red, for some reason, is not very good. Okay, so you have here the story of the heroine harlot, which, by the way, is also a haftarah. It's a haftarah. Would you guess what it's a haftarah to? It's such an easy guess that you might even be ashamed to think of it. Spies? Remember the spies who go to spy out Israel? They send 12 spies, one for each tribe. Okay, so here Joshua has learned his lesson. You don't send 12 people out on a mission, right? Too much can happen. You send out 2 people, all right? 2 is enough. 1 for support, but you don't send out a whole group of people. So Joshua sends out from Shittim 2 men, 2 spies, and he told them to see the land and Jericho. So they go to see the land in Jericho, and who do they go to see right away? They go to see the house of a prostitute, right? That's for them. It's like, when you're on a tour bus and you just go, you don't go any place except to the restaurants and, museums. So you're not really seeing everything. You're just going to see what's limited. So they go to the house of a prostitute whose name was Rahab. And they slept there. It doesn't say they slept with her. It simply said they slept there, okay? And maybe they even put some graffiti on. The 2 spies slept here. And today, if you go to Jericho, maybe you'll see it in the walls, like some graffiti. And this, somehow or another, the king heard, all right? Someone said to them, look, men have come this night from the Israelites to scout out the land. They must have had some sort of an alarm system. Somehow or another, they knew about it. Maybe the dog started to bark, all right? But the fact is that they know it's from the Israelites. So the king of Jericho, who usually knew who would be the first stop for whatever reason, it's possible that she was running an inn or a house of prostitution. We don't really know, or because she herself was a prostitute. Whatever the reason is, the king of Jericho sent to Rahab saying, bring out the men who come to you, who have come to your house, for they have come to scout out the land, all right? What does she do, right? First of all, this particular phrase in here is very interesting because does she have time to do that while he's talking? It would seem that she's already done this, or maybe when a king comes to visit your house, what usually happens?
You go out and greet them.
Oh wait, you might go out and greet them, but what else? You'd have
There's an emissary first.
Emissary, a fanfare, maybe bodyguards coming, maybe people go to check out the house to make sure that everything's okay. I mean, think about the entourage that today goes with all sorts of leaders, all right? So it's quite possible that she knows he's coming. So when it says she had enough time, otherwise it doesn't make sense. But what's really interesting is it says, Vatikach ha'isha et shnei ha'anashim vatitzbeno, right? And first of all, it says, and hid him. Why him? There are 2 of them. So is the text trying to hint at something by saying hid him? Well, there's another place where a woman hides someone, and that's in the case of Moses, who hid her son. Vatitzbenehu, all right? And that's what it says that's what it says exactly when Moses' mother saves Moses. She hid him, Vatitzbenehu. Is the text trying to make a connection between Rahab and Moses' mother? That's pretty cool. If they're doing that deliberately, are they doing it unconsciously? We don't know. However, I usually argue that things are being done deliberately, and I think they want to show that this is a heroic woman who's basically saving not only the 2 spies, but saving the whole endeavor of entering the land of Israel. Okay. And she said, yes, the men who came to me, but I didn't know where they were from. The gate was about to close and the men left. I don't know where they went. Chase after them quickly, for you may overtake them, all right? And then it gives us a backstory. She had taken them up on her roof and hidden them in the flax that was spread out for her on the roof. In other words, the flax was spread out for her. That was basically where she would be sleeping. The men chased after them by way of the crossing of the Jordan. The gate was closed after the pursuers went out. Okay, so this is the basic story. So this is Rahab. Okay, we have lots and lots of stories here, of lots of pictures. This is in a textbook by Julius Schnorr on Karlsfeld. He has these are illustrations that accompany woodcuts that accompany a children's Bible story. And here, if this were in color, what color would this cord be? The word.
Red.
It would be red. All right. Now the red cord will appear. We'll see it afterwards, but there's no color here, so we don't see colors. All right. And so we now continue with Tikva, with what Tikva writes. So she talks about that Rahab is a familiar antitype in folklore, the prostitute with the heart of gold. She has faith in God's might. She adopts the Israelites as her own and rescues them. So in other words, this is the connection with Moses's mother, right? But at the beginning, Rahab is triply marginalized. From Israel's point of view, she's an outsider. From Canaan's point of view, she's a woman. And even from the Canaanite women's point of view, from her countrymen, she's a prostitute outside of normal family life. She's smart, she's proactive, she's tricky, she's unafraid to disobey and deceive her king. Her allegiance to God and Israel make her one of Israel's earlier saviors, okay? And that probably goes back to explain to us why you have the connection that we saw here with Moses' mother, with the Titzvanehu, to make a big deal out of the fact that she is one of Israel's saviors. Okay, so we don't know, by the way, why the men go directly to Rahab's house. The narrator doesn't tell us why, right? But for all sorts of reasons, it's a good place to hide, it's a good place to listen to people, or maybe they simply, men who had been out in the, out in the wilderness for so long, were interested in the soft women, soft beds, and probably some wine and some good food. Okay. Whatever the reason, the king finds out. So she doesn't deny, right? She doesn't deny, but the king, the king asked her, and this is very interesting. Let's go back to the king comes back, okay. The word ba'u came, just like in English, right? And vayavo, they came, just like the English. And it repeats itself 3 times. Ba'im, they came, all right? Has a sexual meaning, all right? In fact, the word bi'ah in Hebrew means sexual communication. The act of bi'ah is, and just like you say, so did you come, right? If somebody has an orgasm. So the whole idea of coming is it's a play on words here, and it appears in the text. So let me just go back to where we are. Okay, so so you have here, wait, oh no, I'm sorry, where am I reading? I think I'm reading here. Yeah, sorry, okay. So the, whatever the reason, the king finds out and sends envoys to demand that Rahab hand over the 2 men. This message is a direct, explicit order. It covers all circumstances and leaves no room for ambiguity. Whether the men have come to you, which can mean sexually, or have only come to your house, which also means sexually, the king wants them. There's no room for Rahab to fudge or misunderstand. This is her moment of truth. She must choose whether to be loyal to her king or to protect the men. And like the midwives in Egypt, she chooses Israel. Okay? And don't forget, if you remember when we talked about the midwives, we said according to tradition, Yocheved was a midwife. Moses' wife was also a midwife. Like them, she tries to avoid a frontal attack. Like them, she conceives the king. Rather than say, no, I won't, she declares her total ignorance. The men came to me, right? They came to me, but I did not know from where. Okay, and they went and they left. And so we now have the scarlet cord, which again, I'm going to make it into purple because red just doesn't work here. So she let them down through the window by a rope, and she tells them to go to the hills, and they say, we're quit of this oath, right? But if you tie this cord in the window and gather it into your house, your father, your mother, your brothers, and all your father's house, whoever goes out of your house will be killed, right? But all who are with you in the house, his blood is on our heads if anyone touches it. So if you want to be saved, when we come to conquer Jericho, if you're all in the house, all of you will be okay, all right? But if you tell anyone about this, we're clear from the oath. So they basically swear to her that she will be protected, okay? Providing that she sticks to the rules. And so that's what she does. And they, meanwhile, the pursuers looked for them. They didn't find them. And the men managed to get out. They crossed over. They told everything to Joshua. And then they said to Joshua, indeed, God has given the whole land into our hands, and the inhabitants of the land are melting away from us. This is in clear distinction to the bad news that the 12 spies gave. And if you remember, because of the 12 spies, because of the bad mouthing of Canaan, what happened, they ended being punished and having to roam around for 40 years, okay? So in other words, Joshua's spies tell him what he needs to hear and what in accordance with the, okay. Meanwhile, Rahab will be saved. And here we have another picture of Rahab of Jericho set in medieval times. Okay. Also an illustration to a Bible. And now, before we go on, I want to raise a question with you. You have here, and some of you may not know this, but Ella I don't know how to pronounce her name. I don't speak Arabic. Eya, maybe, or Waifwa, the IDF's top Muslim woman, right, is, look at all of her decorations. She's the spokeswoman. She's in the army. She's Muslim, okay? And why do I bring her in here? Anyone want to guess why I bring her in here? In connection with Rahab?
She would be
She's an
considered
outsider of
outsider.
outsiders.
Wait, 1 second.
She would be considered an outsider.
Okay, what else?
A traitor.
A traitor.
Right.
Okay. In other words, you can look at Rahab in two ways. She found God, right? And so she betrays her people. She leaves, maybe not her immediate family, but she looks out for herself. She sees this. She looks out for herself, and she found God. All right? I'm saying that cynically, though it's not at all cynical in the Bible. All right, it's me being cynical, not not her. Or she simply is a traitor to her people. I say this because if we look at it with a modern day perspective, it's very, very interesting. So we think of her as a great hero, a heroine. Do they still say heroine, or they say hero now for women today? I have no idea what's politically correct. Do we make a distinction between hero and heroine? Louise, you know things like that.
Well, many would, but I would be, hero would be fine.
Okay. So I really don't know. You can check that. So many things have changed today.
Yeah.
We say servers instead of waitress or waiters. I mean, there's so many things.
Yeah, I think the feminist world prefers hero to heroine.
Like they say actors instead of actress.
They say actor, not just actor and actress.
Right,
Yeah.
an actor as well. So I guess I should say, so she is, you could see her as a true hero. And it's a very interesting article. You could Google the article. It was from last year. You could go July last, exactly a year ago. You could Google it. It's a fascinating story in the Jerusalem Post. Okay, now before we go on, let's look at some Midrashim about Rahab. First of all, in her afterlife, and by the way, here, all the blue now comes from the Jewish Women's JWA. What's JWA? Anyway, their website, and this is the Jewish Women's Encyclopedia, the Shalvi and the Hyman Encyclopedia. And this is the entry on Rahab, Midrash, and Agadah. So in the introduction to the Midrashim about Rahab, first of all, we find out that the rabbis love her, all right? They really love her. They say wonderful things about her, maybe even too much. They go over the top sometimes in terms of the physical stuff about her. But she eventually, she converts and she's married to Joshua, and her descendants include Kohanim and prophets, all right? And in many of the Midrashim, she is the positive influence of Israel. So she becomes a symbol. In other words, Rahab is symbolic of something more than herself. You can almost say it's like she's almost like a metaphor in a sense. She's something that she's like something that she's not, right? Like Israel, and she has influence on other nations, right? And of course, her conversion is not only successful, but she is able to bring progeny, very important progeny. All right, so some Midrashim thought of her as an innkeeper and did not see her as a prostitute, but others see her, and this is sort of a very sad story, actually. So that another strain says that Rahab was 10 years old when Israel left Egypt, and she was a prostitute while Israel wandered in the desert, but she had no other ways, to manage, all right? And she converted at the age of 50, right? So I mentioned afterwards that she's the progenitress of, I should say progenitor now. I changed that, even though it's not my words, of both prophets and priests. And so anyway, so you have here that they were known, Jeremiah is known as her descendant, right? So she becomes almost a superhuman in rabbinic legends. And they see her as one of the four great beauties of the Bible. Yael was one, Michal another, and Abigail was another one. And then I love this description here. And I think my son told this to the group last night. In an after dinner story in the Babylonian Talmud, a rabbi declares that one need only recite the name Rahab, Rahab, to come to climax. When his comrade responds that he himself has said, Rahab, Rahab, with no such result, the first responds that it works only for only for those who know her. A hint, perhaps, that some believed Rahab, about whom the Bible says she lives in the midst of Israel, till this very day, never died. Okay, now this, it says it's a bridge from Tikva. So I guess this was from Tikva, not from the JWA. Or maybe, this was from the JWA, and this was from Tikva. Okay. And here are the actual sources, okay? But notice that's not exactly what it says right here. What Tikva wrote there was that she's still living, but in the in the Babylonian Talmud, in Megillah 15a, first of all, you have here, he replied, right? He replied, I was speaking of one who knows her and who's intimate with her. In other words, the one who knows her knows that whoever says, Rahab, Rahab, will have an orgasm. Whereas Nachman, he didn't know her, so nothing happened to him. Okay. But then you have some other things which are not so nice. It says, with Rahab the harlot would fornicate with the men of her city from within and with bandits from without, as it is stated, for her house was on the town wall, and she dwelt upon the wall. And in Zvachim, also the Babylonian Talmud, there was no officer or governor who did not fornicate with Rahab the harlot. They said, and this we saw after before. Okay, anyway, those are what I call nasty midrashim, or almost pornographic midrashim. And here you have another picture of Rahab in the wall, and here you have the army getting ready to attack Jericho, and here she's letting down the men. And then we have here Huldah was a descendant of Joshua. Remember, we studied about Huldah the prophet. She's the one who is responsible for saying that the lost scroll that they found during Hezekiah's time, that she was the prophetess who said, this is it, it's real. And so they talked about 8 prophets who came from Rahab, and there's a whole list here, right? And Rabbi Judah says that Huldah was also one of the descendants of Rahab. How do we know? Because it is written here, the son of Tikva, and it is written elsewhere in connection with Rahab in line Tikvat Hut Hashani. And I did not show that to you before, but I'll show it to you now. Let me just make it purple. Okay. Here it says that she let down. Here is the Tikvat Hut Hashani, the hope, almost the hope. Tikva is a hope. Tikvat Hut Hashani, the bright scarlet cord that will be let down. It's not clear what the meaning Tikva means here. It's really not clear. So I'm just pointing that out to you. And so that's why she is, since it says she's the son of Tikva, the rabbis make the connection. They say, oh, so she must come from Rahav's descent because of that, okay? But this is one of my favorite parts of this particular midrash, right? Joshua married her, but had Joshua had any children? Is it not written, Nun, his son, Joshua, his son? So what do they say? He had no sons, but he had daughters. Daughters don't count. So this is, when I say favorite, I mean not favorite that I like it, favorite in the negative sense. Okay. Here we have another, and this is Janet Schaffner, whose stuff I really love. And this is, you have here a connection made with the Hut Hashani, the scarlet cord from the door, which makes it look like what?
Blood.
Like blood on the
doorpost.
On the doorpost, which reminds us of
Pesach.
10 plagues, right? So all the people who she's going to gather inside her house will be safe because of the red thread, right? Whereas, just like, the lamb's blood that was on the doorway. And if you don't have a red thread, if you did not have lamb's blood on your lintel, then, you killed. Okay. Here's another picture. Right, this is an Israeli artist who, again, this is the Hut Hashani. This is the Hut Hashani. Argentina, comes from Argentina. And here's another one. This is Rahab of Jericho with Dina Cormick, another very modernistic look. And what do you have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. What do these 7 represent here?
The trumpets of Jericho.
7 trumpets of Jericho, right? Okay. I don't think we need this one. We already saw that. One more very startling image, right? Very startling image. And even though it doesn't say who this is, I would imagine it's the French, what's his name? That's what I would imagine. Anyway, here, very realistically, I mean, not the walls, but very realistically, she's on the roof, and they might have been hiding under the flax, but now they're on their way to leave. Okay, so now we come to today's Midrash. There are actually two of them. Do we have time for two? I'm not sure. Let's see. One is praise her works. Let me see. Okay, we'll have Rahab speaking. Okay, so just to remind those of you who may not have been here on the many times I've used Penina Edelman's book, Praise Her Works, Conversations with Biblical Women, and she has everyone speaking in the book. And Louise, would you like to read this? Rahab speaks.
Sure.
Yes.
Me?
Louise.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
Louise.
I have been blessed. After all I have been through, after all I have seen and done, I have been blessed with a husband who is none other than the leader of my new people, with a community of believers and moral exemplars who have welcomed me and my family as heroes and as equals, with my children happily married in their own families, with the assurance that my descendants will be priests and prophets. My dreams have come true. I'll never forget how it started. I was 10 when I heard the rumor of the great miracle at the Sea of Reeds. I remember wondering how such a thing could be. They said there was a slave people saved by an invisible God and led by an Egyptian prince turned rebel. They said these slaves escaped from the Pharaoh and walked unharmed through the Sea of Reeds while their erstwhile captors perished in its waters. Absurd. Yet the rumors kept reaching us from different sources. Eyewitness accounts, bits of overheard conversations, actual contact with the nomadic tribes, children of the slaves. At first, no one believed any of it, but the stories kept coming about this strange people who were now traversing the desert. Where were they going? What were they going to do next? How powerful were they exactly? I, of course, was in a position to hear all of the rumors firsthand and in great detail. How did I end up a prostitute? I would like to be able to say I made the decision, but in fact, at the time, I felt I had no choice.
Another picture of Scarlet Thread, artist unknown. Stevie, would you like to continue?
Sure. I needed the money to stay alive. My parents were ill and could not work. My brothers and sisters were struggling, and I needed to find a way to survive. So I did what I had to do, and I did it well. I had a way with words. It was like a magical power, and I used it to my advantage. Men would tell me everything. Soon I had earned a reputation as a confidant and a dealer in information. It was a very risky business, but I managed to keep it going for about 40 years. It was close to the end of this time when the rumors stopped being rumors and turned into truth. It was when we heard how the children of Israel defeated Sihon and Og and the two most powerful kings of the region, the longtime leaders of the Amorite people. This could not have been made up. It could not be mere rumor. Therefore, to many of us, this meant that the previous stories had to be true as well. Panic ensued. People tried to run away, but our king stopped them, closing the gates of the city and instituting enforced curfew. Suspected traitors or collaborators were tortured or burned. The new laws hurt my business, but it didn't matter. I had already made my decision. Somehow I was going to leave. The lure of a new life beckoned. I needed to leave my house in the wall and my past behind. I could join with the new faith, the believers in the one God. And then the opportunity I had sought came knocking on my door. The two spies from the Israelites were ferocious men, yet steadfast in their mission and loyal to their leader. I saved their lives, risking my own and my family's lives. Thank God for the red thread. I still have it as a reminder of all that has transpired, of all I left behind, and of all that is yet to come for my family and me.
Okay, so what's the purpose of all of this? Let's go back to Stephanie Newman Samuels, who teaches in a middle school, and I don't know, this is quite a while ago, but I don't know her personally. But what is behind her story here? What's the point of Rahab speaking?
I think it's trying to give the reasons why she helped the spies.
Okay.
She's also very powerful.
She's
Yeah.
also very powerful. Good. Do we learn anything new here? She clearly knows the Midrash. But she humanizes her, right? She humanizes her, and she's very matter of fact about her being a prostitute, right? She refers to it as a business. She has no shame about it, right? The closest we have to shame is the fact that, I would like to be able to say I made the decision, but in fact, I felt I had no choice, all right? That's the closest, but there's no self-pity on her part. And she talks about it as actually having given her some sort of an advantage. Okay, here's another picture of Rahab. This is a polymer clay relief sculpture by Sarah Joseph. Very interesting. What could you say about this is a close-up here, right? But what can you say about what can you say about this? But what is this here in the middle? You want to figure out what that is?
Isn't that the red cord?
I'm talking about this.
This down here? Oh, that.
Looks like a knife.
Yeah, it does. Looks like a sheath with a knife.
It looks like that. There's not a sharp edge. However, what can you say about the cord? That's what's interesting here.
It looks a little umbilicish.
It looks like an umbilical cord, yes. Okay. Or it also looks like
Soldier.
what?
I said, I think the figure looks like a soldier.
Like a
me.
soldier. Okay. But it also looks a little bit like a snake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the umbilical cord, I think, really is very interesting. And then if it's an umbilical cord, and it's the Chut Hashani, we're making a big deal out of this Chut Hashani. Because what is an umbilical cord?
A lifeline?
Yeah.
What?
A lifeline?
It's a lifeline. It's something that connects you to your mother, right? But at some point, it also, if it's an umbilical cord, it sometimes also cuts. So she is, on the one hand, she's cutting herself off from her own people, and she's starting a new life. So I love the suggestion that it's an umbilical cord, right? I have no idea what the artist had in mind, but I really, I'm actually, normally I'm going to write that down here before I forget. Because
Looks
I
like
think
the red thread. There's a red thread that she used to get them out. No?
yeah, of course. But it's the umbilical cord. It's what she saves them. It's her tie to the people, right? It's her tie to the people. Let me just inserts 1 second, text box. Right? Although if I put it in here, then if I ask the question again, then go. Am I spelling that correctly? If it's an umbilical cord, then you have to give it up at some point, right? You can't keep it forever and ever. So I think it's very suggestive, very, very suggestive. Okay. Here we have something which Arthur Waskow wrote many years ago. I don't think we'll have time to get to Jill's, but you can always open up your books and read Jill's, or I could send it to you as an attachment. Arthur Waskow had a letter. He had written something, all right, and there was a letter that was in response to him, right? Joyce, would you like to read? Are you there? Joyce,
Sure.
Yeah, Rahab the broad.
Rahab. Oh, go ahead.
Joyce.
Oh, Rahab the broad has heard of the great redemptive
Joyce, I put now. Let's try again. Start now again.
Wait a minute.
No, just keep reading.
Okay.
Rahab
the broad has heard something's wrong.
Okay.
Let someone else.
Norman, would you like to read? Norman.
Rahab the broad has heard of the great redemptive acts of the God of Israel. When Rahab has heard of what Rahab has heard of is that the Israelites wiped out a whole bunch of other city-states, and that thanks to God fighting shoulder to shoulder with them, they are pretty much invincible, unless the enemy have iron chariots or well-defended borders, which tend to kick God's butt. So rather than do the right thing and warn as many of her own people as possible to get the heck out of Jericho, Rahab makes a special deal to save herself and her family. The result of Rahab's treachery is that every man, woman, and child in Jericho is killed. In this post, Waskell, once again, we see in this post, once again, we see an act of genocide eulogized by people who should know better. But since the story is in the Bible, surely it must be good. So somehow we have to bend our conscience and twist our morality to see it as good. This corruption of the modern conscience is what makes the Bible so dangerous, and why modern Jews and Christians have a moral responsibility to repudiate these scriptures.
Okay, Yao, right?
Wow.
This is one of these Yao things, which I think it's really worthwhile looking at, because today especially, when there's so much anti-Semitism out there, I think that we really have to occasionally listen to another voice. We don't have to agree with it, but this goes against the grain of our way of our looking at the text, right? We look upon this and Joshua as a great hero. There are other people who can't stand the book of Joshua because of all of the conquests and all of the killing and whatever. So it's very, very interesting. So I think I tried to find the original letter.
There's sort of a way out of that, though, because we read before that the king had closed the gates of the city.
Right.
So it's not exactly easy for the people to get. It's like Germany in, pre-World War II. You couldn't get out.
Very good. Very good. In fact, let me just underline that, because where did I see that here, right? Our king, right. People, here we go. Oops. Okay, that's very, very important. And I think we can actually, right, and suspected traitors were tortured. In other words, we can use that argument today also, right? When we talk about the people in Gaza. I don't want to get into politics here, but I'm just saying we could use that type of an article so that people are not allowed to leave. So what can you do? Okay, I think that's really a very good point. So that's a very good counter argument. Where did this come from? Oh, Suzanne Schultz. Okay, Suzanne Schultz is a very, very strong vocal feminist. She's written quite a bit. She's from Germany originally, but she's now in some college. I think she has tenure. I don't remember where. I've done a book review of her, and I know her personally. She's much more radical in her approach to text than I am. But she points out that Rahab has a hybrid identity, right? She's in between the space of her Canaanite and Israelite identities, right? Second, like Asian America, she's a perpetual foreigner, right? So just like all Asians, people never really believe, they're not really seen as local Americans even today, right? And third, like Asian Americans, Rahab is viewed as a model minority, right? A heroine, intelligent, knowledgeable, outsmarting her own king and the other Canaanites, right? She's an entrepreneur and a good negotiator, right? She's referring to two scholars, two Asian scholars, Kajin Jeffrey Kahn and Mayan Nitran, all right? So they have been reading Rahab in correlation with their Asian identity. I don't know if any of you saw, remind me when I turn off when I turn this off, remind me to say something, all right, in connection with this, because it's political and I don't want to say it on the,
Recorded.
okay, remind me somebody, okay. So now we come to Alicia Ostreicher, who has been here with us, all right? I think she came to our group once and she's on my list. And she's written about Ruth and I guess I went to her presentation. Oh, I guess that's why, right? She is an American poet and she was the New York State Poet Laureate. She's very, very interesting woman and I'm in touch with her every now and then. And this is what she writes about the story of Joshua. Susan Sferis, would you like to read it?
Okay, let me see if I can focus on it here. Where should I start?
First of all,
Wait,
before
okay, there, that's better, yeah.
I'll just quote for you from Cotton Mather.
Okay,
The New Englanders are people of God, settled in those which were once the devil's territories, 1692. Okay, now.
okay. We reached the promised land 40 years later. The original ones who were slaves have died. The young are seasoned soldiers. There is wealth enough for everyone and God here at our side. The people are mad with excitement. Here is what to do: to take this land away from the inhabitants, burn their villages and cities, kill their men, kill their women, consume the people utterly. God says, is that clear? I give you the land, but you must murder for it. You will be a nation like other nations. You will be a nation like other nations. Your hands are going to be strained like theirs. Your innocence annihilated. Keep listening, Joshua. Only to you among the nations do I also give knowledge, the secret, knowledge that you are doing evil. Only to you the commandment. Love ye, therefore, the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. A pillar of fire to light your passage. Through the blank desert of history forever, this is the agreement. Is it entirely clear, Joshua, said the Lord? I said it was. He then commanded me to destroy Jericho.
Okay, this is really very, very difficult. Okay, what's the message here? What's the message here?
The message is go in, clear. It's
Clear
talking
the
about what
land.
War.
war
And
And
killing. And do
it.
it. And do it.
Or, but I muted you, Joyce, because we hear you through the other Joyce.
Yes, I understand.
Yes, that's why I muted you. So keep yourself muted because we hear you when you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. There's first of all the word kill appears a lot. All right. Murder. Right. Annihilated. Even though it's your innocence being annihilated, but there's it's what is he the what is the a point that he's making here, the secret knowledge, right, that you're doing evil. What does this remind us that in general that God gives knowledge? What does that remind us of a little bit?
Garden of Eden.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to the Garden of Eden, that we have been given knowledge, all right? And
Right.
he wants Joshua to know that you are doing evil, right? And you're supposed to love the, right? You're supposed to love the stranger,
Yeah.
right? Right? And you were a pillar of fire to light, right? In other words, that God, but who gives the order to command? Who gives the order? Who gives
God
the
is giving him the order. I mean, it says you will be a nation like other nations. Your hands will be stained like theirs, your innocence annihilated. And yet he's still telling them to do that.
right? God tells him to do that. In other words, it's almost turning Joshua into sort of God's tool.
Mm.
Right? And why the connection with the New Englanders?
It's also a feeling of superiority that they're displacing people who sort of don't deserve to really live the way they do.
Right? Who were the others there? Who were the devils there?
The Indians.
The
Indians,
Indians. Yeah, the Native Americans.
Native Americans, or there's another word that we say, not only Native Americans, we now say the
Indigenous.
Indigenous.
right?
Yeah.
The
Indigenous
indigenous.
people. Yeah.
So so I think that's really very interesting for connecting this. And I think it's really brilliant. I think what she's written here is really brilliant. And again, you don't have to agree with it. I mean, I'm not trying to force any viewpoints on you. I'm just, as usual, trying to make you think. Right? We're not going to get to Jill here. I'll just put just put it on here for your benefit. And then if any of you want to, if you don't have access to her book, she has something called "And the Walls Came Tumbling Down." I could send it to you. I'm not going to send it to everyone because it is copyrighted material. But what I'll do is I'll take a screen.
I have it. I have the book, so I don't need it, Naomi.
No,
so-
I'm just saying I can send it to whoever is here today. I feel funny sending it to the whole group. This is another one with the. This is another one, and this is here. Wait, if we're skipping her, let me just add one last thing here. Okay, one last thing, which is a little less harsh than Geraldine, I didn't see that you're here. You've been very quiet today. You must have come in late. Are you there with us to read this? You have to unmute if you are. No, she may not be there. Stevie, would you like to read this? Woman of Jericho.
Sure. Through 7 times or 70 times 7, your armies circle our beleaguered town. Not with their clamor may our gates be riven. Oh, not by trumpets shall the walls go down. Send out your troops to trample the fresh grasses with horns and banners. They shall find defeat. These walls can bear the insolence of brasses sounded at noonday in the dust and heat. It is the whisper only that we dread, the hushed and delicate murmur like low weeping, which shall assail us, when, as do the dead, the warders sleep and all the town lies sleeping. That holy word is whispered, which can fell these armored walls and raise the citadel.
Okay, what is she trying to say here? And it's the women of Jericho, right? What is she trying to say here? It's the whisper that we heard. What is the whisper?
Mhm.
First of all, the whisper is the holy word. The holy word is whispered. So what is dread? What do the women dread?
To speak up,
Destruction.
speaking up.
Speaking up, okay, but the holy word is whispered, which can fell armored walls. So what are they all afraid of?
The destruction of the city.
in the name of
Of
God.
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 God and religion, exactly. So you have here really something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just take a screenshot, so I know who to send all the. Oh, I see.
Yeah,
Elizabeth.
I'd like it. You wanted to say something before you stopped recording, after you stopped recording.
I will in a minute. So first
Okay.
of all,
Just wanted to remind you.
Naomi,
Okay.
this is a very, very difficult class because of what we're going through now.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, as you know, I don't hesitate to, make you ask questions and think about,
Just very difficult.
very difficult. I agree. And by the way, this week's parsha, which ends with Pinchas stabbing the two women, not the two women, the man and women who are fornicating in front of the Ohel Moed, right? And then in next week's parsha, he gets the blessing of shalom, the covenants, right? The Brit Shalom. That also is very because God, the avenging God, and all of that. That's also very problematic. So before I go into what I wanted to answer, let me stop the recording. So I'll see you people next week. But don't go away. Stop recording.